Evil is as evil does. Remember Frankenstein, Wolfman, and King Kong? Each monster was attracted to a woman of strange beauty. Now the incredible two-headed transplant lives, loves, and kills beauty it could not resist. Here is a two-headed monster with the body of a giant. One brain says kill, the other says love. You must see the incredible two-headed transplant.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate.
Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
This is the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And on this episode, we're going to dive headfirst, twice, into the wild, weird, lopsided world of the Incredible Two-Headed Transplant.
The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant was directed by Anthony M. Lanza, written by James Gordon White and John Lawrence, and produced by John Lawrence for Trident Enterprises and released by American International Pictures.
The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant stars Bruce Dern as Dr. Roger Girard, Pat Priest as Linda Girard, Casey Kasem as Dr. Ken Anderson, Albert Cole as Manuel Cass, John Bloom as Danny Norton, Leslie Cole as young Danny.
It also stars Barry Kroeger as Max, Larry Vincent as Andrew Norton, Jack Lester as the sheriff, Jerry Patterson as the deputy, and Darlene Duralia as Miss Pierce.
Who's Miss Pierce?
I really don't know. I don't think I ever wrote down that character name in our synopsis.
The film opens in a fit of violence. A young woman, who may or may not be Miss Pierce, is being molested by Manuel Cass.
Yes, this is a home invasion. He's already killed her parents. They're lying on the floor in the kitchen. The phone is off the hook, and we can hear an emergency operator asking if anyone's there.
Cass tears at the woman's dress, and she begs for him to let her go. Apparently, the dispatcher was able to put two and two together because the police are pulling up in front of the house.
I think the dispatcher is obliged to send help, regardless of whether someone defines what help they need. At least they are now. When Cass hears the police coming, he goes to look out the window. Miss Pierce, or whoever she is, uses this opportunity to try to get away, but Cass grabs her and uses her as a human shield as the cops are entering the house.
The cops try to reason with Cass, and he responds by leaping out a plain glass window.
He's all set to run away when a third cop is there to make the arrest, and he drops his cleaver.
He raises his hands and laughs as a transition as a gavel banging 3 times.
A judge tells us that Manuel Cass is judged to have been insane at the time his crimes were committed, so he's being committed to an asylum for the criminally insane. He laughs maniacally as he's dragged away.
Then the title comes up, and the song Incredible by Bobby Boyle plays.
As the song plays, we enjoy some scenic views of the mountains of Santa Clarita. A large man galumps across the field, and then we see him, this is Danny, and his father, Andrew, trying to saw down the trunk of a dead tree.
A car pulls up, and Casey Kasem comes out of it.
Wow, is he doing America's Top 40 on the road?
Actually, it's Ken Anderson. He's wearing a yellow shirt and a paisley ascot and a belt with an enormous buckle.
One of the main things I've learned from this podcast is that Casey Kasem could be an actor and not just a voice on the radio. This is the second time we've seen him in a role. He was in The Glory Stompers as a motorcycle thug named Mouth, fittingly.
Ken looks over at Danny and his father, Andrew, who are working on that tree trunk.
Well, they stop to stare at him. They're giving him kind of dirty looks.
Ken puts on his jacket and goes to the door, and he's greeted by Linda, played by Pat Priest. She's happy to see him, but says they haven't come out of the laboratory in 3 days.
They don't even answer when she knocks. Ken tells her that she's been married for 6 months, but she sounds like an old married woman.
She complains that Roger is paying more attention to his experiments than to her. Ken assures her that Roger is doing the best he can after his breakdown that resulted in his dismissal from the hospital.
Linda knows this and thinks it was cruel of the hospital to not let him return to work, but she thinks that Roger is driving himself to another breakdown, and she doesn't want to be around to witness that.
Ken offers to talk to Roger and knocks on the door to the lab. Roger peeks out to make sure Linda isn't around, then smiles and invites Ken in.
Ken tries to take in the sights, sounds, and smells of Roger's lab. Ken tells Roger that he's there because Linda's all shook up. Why doesn't he just go out there and talk to her? Roger says he can't, and then he shows him why.
He responds by inviting Ken to see what he's been working on. He pulls back a curtain over a cage to reveal a monkey with 2 heads.
It's a monkey with another monkey's head attached to its body.
It's been 3 days since the other head has been attached.
Roger says that he cannot leave the monkey's side right now. And then Roger shows off his whole 2-headed menagerie.
He shows Ken a 2-headed snake, a 2-headed fox, and a 2-headed rabbit, while Max, Roger's assistant, looks on suspiciously from the table where he's working.
Only the snake is a real two-headed animal, and the other ones are obvious fakes. The poor animals look so perplexed at why they have fake heads attached to their bodies.
Ken thinks this is incredible, and he wants to know what comes next. Roger tells Ken he plans to do a full head transplant. And then, asks Ken, then humans. Ken is aghast. What happens to the body of the head that was removed?
Roger's a lot more laid back about this.
He's laid back about everything.
He really is. He poses a what if. What if the person had an irreparable brain tumor? Would that be acceptable for him to donate his body to someone whose body was just as non-functioning as his brain? I guess he doesn't really spell it out.
We assume in Roger's scenario that both are willing participants.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so sure. In the realm of mad science, that's rarely the case. Ken asks who will judge who should live and who should die then. Future generations, says Roger nonchalantly.
He says everything nonchalantly.
No, he gets angry a couple times. When he's talking to his wife, he's pretty chalant.
Max hobbles over with a vial of blood. He says the white blood cell count is normal, just as it was the day before. Roger takes the vial and Max shoots Ken a dirty look.
Roger introduces Max to Ken, and Ken shakes his hand. Max winces at the touch. We never really find out why. There's something wrong with his hands.
Then Max says he has more work to do and takes the vial back from Roger. Ken tells Roger that Ken thinks Linda's going to leave Roger.
Roger slurs, "What makes you say that?" I'm just trying to capture the quality of Bruce Dern's delivery here.
Ken convinces Roger to come out and talk to Linda, but first Roger needs to finish the tests he's working on. It should only be about 3 or 4 minutes. So Ken goes out to tell Linda that Roger will be coming out momentarily.
But first, Roger grabs him by the waist and asks him to keep all this lab stuff between the two of them. Ken agrees and leaves. Max asks if Ken can be trusted.
Roger tells Max he's got to relax. He's known Ken since he worked at the hospital. And one thing Roger knows, it's how to relax. He's a pretty laid-back guy.
But Max still looks suspicious.
Ken has gone outside and he's watching Andrew still trying to pull out that dead tree. He's got a couple horses tied to it.
Danny's sitting on the ground watching the horses struggle with the tree trunk, and then he asks if he can help. So gentle giant Danny gives the tree trunk a shove, and it comes right out.
When the tree comes up, Danny falls over, but he's overjoyed that he was able to help. So what we know about Danny is he's a big boy, but a little slow.
And really strong. And now later we see Danny swinging an axe around the yard by himself. It looks like he's practicing some sort of axe kung fu. Inside, Linda, Ken, and Roger are yucking it up after dinner and drinks, I presume.
Ken is on his way out after his visit, and Roger and Linda are walking him to the door. Outside, Danny is coming up the walkway, still swinging that axe. Roger opens the front door for Ken just as Danny reaches the entryway.
Ken nearly gets chopped by Danny doing his lumberjack ninja routine on the porch. Linda scolds Danny for his carelessness, but Roger calmly tells Danny that he's to use the tools for yard work and nothing more. He knows that.
Roger coaxes the axe from Danny's hand, then sends him home. Roger apologizes to Ken and tells him that Danny only has the mentality of an 8-year-old. When he was young, he'd been playing in a mine and was trapped in a cave-in. He was rescued, but the lack of oxygen caused irreparable brain damage. Linda says he still has a morbid fascination for that cave.
As Ken gets in his car, he says that he'll be back to stay in a month when he gets some vacation time. I'm not sure that he was invited, but he's definitely coming back. As he's going, he wishes Roger good luck with his little pets. Roger looks alarmed at this lack of discretion on Ken's part.
Roger frowns, but turns it into a schmaltzy smile when he notices Linda looking at him. This is the first clue she's had about what's going on in the lab.
Back in the lab, Roger pets his monkey, who has grown accustomed to have a fake monkey head attached to his neck now, because it's been 30 days since the surgery.
Max tells Roger that, with the progress they've made, it's time to take the next step. 10 years ago, Max was a skilled surgeon, but his hands are no longer what they used to be. But with Roger's help, Max can get a new pair of hands and a body to go with them.
Why not just the hands? Would that be a lot simpler, and then he could keep his body?
That's not Roger's expertise. He's transplanting heads.
I guess. There are doctors that do hand transplants, though. It's happened.
Roger stares at Max for a moment, then walks away to contemplate what Max has asked of him.
And then we hear chop, chop, chop as Andrew hacks away at the hedges with his clippers, and Linda comes out to tend to her garden. Danny is there using an axe for its intended purpose, cutting firewood. When he sees Linda, he rushes to her side to help.
Andrew and Danny seem to be like the groundskeepers of their property. They work for Roger and Linda, I think.
Oh yeah, I thought that was obvious.
Well, first time through, I thought they were neighbors.
Neighbors? I don't do anything for my neighbors. I barely do anything for myself.
That's what made me second guess and I said, oh, they work for these people. Andrew, noticing that Danny has left his task, tells Danny to get back to chopping that wood. Danny says he can do it later, but Linda tells him he should do what his father asks right now. Then later he can come back and help her.
Danny sulks his way back to that pile of wood. Roger comes out to see Linda, who asks if there isn't something they can do for Danny. Roger says maybe after my next experiment, as he watches Danny do physical labor.
Then Linda suggests they go somewhere, like take a trip, just the two of them. They can go to that lodge, the one where they spent their honeymoon. Roger says that sounds very nice.
Roger isn't going to go on vacation with his wife, but he will give her a guilt trip. What about his work? What does she suggest he do about his work? Linda looks appropriately sheepish.
Then Max runs out and calls for Roger to come quick. The monkey!
Not the monkey. Roger and Max run back to the lab where the monkey is lying in the cage unresponsive. Roger puts it on a table, checks its vitals, and then declares that it's dead.
He wonders what could have happened. Max suggests it could have been heart failure, and Roger says they should start the autopsy right away. So while Linda bathes and gets dressed up for her night alone, Roger and Max begin their tests.
Post-autopsy, Roger has determined a cause of death. Too much fat in his diet. His heart failed, not his head's.
So the monkey's death had nothing to do with the transplant. In fact, if the monkey had been healthy, he'd still be alive.
Wow, this is groundbreaking stuff.
Inspired by this, Max once again suggests that Roger move on to the next phase in his experiments.
Uh-oh. Now it's later at night. Linda's sitting in bed with Roger. She wants to know why those experiments are so important. But Roger doesn't answer. Instead, he starts ranting about what the hospital did to him and how now he's going to show them. He'll show them all.
He raises his voice.
He can be more dynamic when he's with Linda, just not in a good way. Linda tells him that he could be a fine surgeon again, but Roger's goals are loftier.
He says that all he wants to do is help people, but the hospital won't let him work there. So he's continuing these experiments as a way to help mankind. So if she could just be patient with him, just a little bit longer, he'll take her anywhere she wants to go. Linda says that he's said all that before. Yeah, he says, but I didn't mean it before. This time I do.
Wow. I wouldn't find that very reassuring, but she does, and they kiss. Now we have a dramatic cut, because we are in the asylum for the criminally insane.
Cass is choking out the only staff member on duty.
And the whole building, apparently. And then he makes an easy exit from the hospital, where he boosts a car and drives it away.
He's delighted to find that he picked a car with a bag of groceries sitting in the passenger seat. As he drives off, he drinks milk while listening to the radio, where Ken apparently works at least part-time because he's reading the report to be on the lookout for Manuel Cass, who has escaped from the mental hospital in a stolen 61 Comet.
He also is extremely dangerous and possibly armed. And then we cut over to Roger's house and Linda, who's by the pool listening to the transistor radio, and her friend Ken/Casey Kasem, who says, if you see this man, report him to your local law enforcement agency immediately.
Then Casey puts on some music. As Andrew's walking along the other side of the pool, Linda asks Andrew if he knows where Danny is. He's around somewhere on the grounds, says Andrew. Then Linda asks if Max has come back from town yet, and to let her know when he does. She'll be right there by the pool, she says.
Now we cut to Danny strolling through the mountains to the strains of Incredible, the second time we hear this song. He arrives at the mine opening where he had his accident.
We see in flashback young Danny playing with his friends near the mine. Danny goes to the entrance and peers inside.
But he sees that it's full of spiders. Yikes. He replays the accident in his mind, and then he gets spooked and runs away. As he runs, we see Cass on the road driving the stolen car onto Roger's property.
Cass parks the car and starts walking along the fence. Through the fence, he sees Linda sunning herself by the pool, and he licks his chops.
Linda throws on a cover-up and heads into the house, and Cass follows her. She's in the kitchen making herself something to drink when Cass comes in through the sliding door. When she sees him, she runs, screaming for Roger. Cass chases her, and this time Roger actually comes out to help.
He's not much help, though. Roger comes out of the lab, and Cass immediately knocks him out. Then Cass runs to the wall and pulls a cord from a light under a picture frame. Linda begs him, please don't. Then Cass has her face the wall so he can frisk her.
He didn't really need to frisk her, and he kissed her first, so he's obviously got other intentions, unfortunately for Linda.
Then Cass goes back to the unconscious Roger and hog-ties him with the cord.
Linda watches the hog-tying and then runs for the door. She gets it open, but Cass lunges for her. However, her screams attract the attention of Andrew, who brings his hoe into the house to try to fight the intruder.
Meanwhile, Danny is still wandering around aimlessly on the grounds,
oblivious to what's happening here. Cass easily disarms Andrew and clubs him with his hoe. Then Frog marches Linda out of the house and down a hill to where he parked the car.
Roger wakes up and upon seeing Andrew's body lying next to him, calls out, Linda? Cass drags Linda back to the car, pulling off her dress as they go.
Finally, Danny, bearing a hand-picked bouquet for Miss Linda, enters the house. Roger calls out for him to come into the foyer and then asks Danny to untie him, but Danny can't see anyone but his father lying prone on the floor.
Danny sits down and cradles his father's head in his arms. Daddy, talk to me, he says. Danny, untie me so I can help your daddy, says Roger. But Danny is in shock and is just rocking back and forth with his dead father's body in his arms.
And then we see Cass driving away with Linda, mauling her as he does. Then we see Max driving back to the house and passing their car. He doesn't see Linda, though.
Roger hears Max's car pull up and yells out, Max! Max comes in and stops short and frowns at the display of bodies lying before him.
What the heck? Back with Cass, he's still macking on Linda. A lot of quick cuts here.
Back at the house, Max has untied Roger, and they're both heading out to Roger's car, each armed with a shotgun. Roger and Max get into the car and start driving around looking for Linda and her captor. On the radio, Kasem tells them that Cass is believed to be headed to Sunnyvale in Northern California, where 2 years ago he had brutally murdered 9 men and women.
Cass, who has found a place to park, breaks that milk jug against the car door, a dairy christening of sorts. He takes the broken bottleneck and approaches Linda, who is cowering on the ground. He drops to the ground and starts forcing himself on her as she whimpers.
Kasem's voice continues, "If Cass is seen, please notify local law enforcement."
And then we see Max loading the shotgun. Back with Cass and Linda, he threatens that if she doesn't kiss him, something bad is going to happen to her. She pretends to comply and then kicks him off of her.
And she makes a break for it. As she's running, she sees Roger's car drive by. She calls out, but trips and falls, then starts to weep as the car drives past.
Cass grabs her and starts dragging her off. Roger sees this in the rearview mirror and executes a very slow U-turn to go back. The car is very big.
Roger and Max emerge from the car with their shotguns in hand. Cass is momentarily distracted, and Linda pulls away. Cass turns to run, and Roger fires his shotgun, shooting Cass in the back, and Cass goes down. Roger helps Linda to the car, then goes to help Max with Cass's body.
At home, Danny is still cradling the body of his father. And then we see Max dropping off Linda and Roger and driving around back.
Roger and Linda walk past Danny, who's still mumbling to himself. Roger puts Linda to bed and gives her a sedative. She asks him to help poor Danny, and Roger promises he will.
When he goes back out to Danny, he does try to get Danny away from his daddy, but Danny throws him off. And the next time we see Roger, he's in the laboratory where Max is prepping Cass for surgery. Roger soaks a cloth in chloroform and says that they have to get Danny away from his daddy. The death of his father has completely undone him.
So Roger and Max go back to Danny, and Roger places that chloroform-soaked rag over Danny's mouth and nose, while Linda tosses in bed.
They finally knock him out and then drag him into the lab.
Danny is placed on a bed in the lab next to Cass. The prognosis on Cass is that he's not going to make it. Max thinks this is wonderful. They have a one-of-a-kind opportunity here. They have Danny, whose mind is gone, and a homicidal maniac who is moments away from death. Roger isn't sure about this. He walks back over to Danny, and he remembers that he promised Andrew he and Linda would look out for Danny after he's gone. Max beckons Roger back over to Cass and tells Roger that Cass is now legally dead.
Roger expresses regret at Cass's death, but Max bright-sides the situation. They have the perfect opportunity.
It's now or never. Roger looks back at Danny, then back to Max. He runs his hand over his brow. "All right," Roger sighs.
And the surgery commences. Roger takes a scalpel to Danny's neck. Time passes. Things are clamped and removed.
It's a slow and sweaty process.
Eventually it's over, and now Danny's body is sporting a second head. Max says they've done it. "May God forgive us," intones Roger.
Roger says that they'll be asleep for a few days, but there's still one more thing they have to do before morning. Roger goes into Linda's room, and she wakes up. She asks if the sheriff had arrived. Roger tells her that the sheriff came. He told the sheriff Linda was asleep, and that his statement was enough.
And that the sheriff took away the body of her assailant, who died. Linda asks about Danny, so Roger lies further, saying that Danny had run away. Linda's upset, but Roger calms her down. Danny has run away before.
He'll be fine, and Roger has sent Max to go to town to arrange for a decent funeral for Andrew.
Actually, Max is digging a shallow grave for the bodies. And then we see his next task is pushing Cass's car over a cliff.
His hands may not work, but he manages to do a lot with the hands he's got. It's now 6 days later, and Danny/Cass continue to sleep. Roger and Max continue to run tests, and everything checks out fine, and Roger declares the experiment a success.
Then Linda shouts through the door that Roger has a call. Roger crabs that he can't come to the phone right now. Find out who it is. I'll call back. But Linda says it's Ken, so I guess he can come to the phone right now.
Roger goes out to take the call, and Max locks the door behind him. Ken is calling from the desk nurse's phone at the hospital, and another nurse comes over to have him sign something. Ken's vacation is coming up, and he can be over this weekend. Roger says great, they'll expect him on Saturday, and he's got something really special to show Ken when he arrives.
After Roger hangs up, Linda says she's still worried about Danny. Roger promises to go to the sheriff if he's not back in a couple days.
Then Roger returns to the lab to find Danny and Cass are waking up.
Max and Roger try to calm down their creation with a sedative. Linda hears all the grunting and groaning in the lab and asks what's wrong. Roger says nothing and tells her to go away, and she does.
That night, Danny awakens to find another head attached to his body. "Who are you?" he asks. "I'm your brother," says Cass. Danny complains that his neck hurts. Cass tells him to shut up and that the two of them are now one. He tells Danny to stand up, which he clumsily does, even breaking the straps that are holding him down to the bed. In Roger and Linda's room, Linda wakes up and quietly grabs Roger's keys to the lab.
Cass/Danny see their reflection in a window. Outside, Linda is sneaking towards the lab. Inside the lab, Danny/Cass are changing from a hospital gown to Danny's overalls as Linda unlocks the door.
Linda goes in and doesn't see anything unusual at first, but turns around when she hears the door shut behind her. She sees Danny with the head of the guy who attacked her attached to him, and she faints.
Max rushes in, and Danny/Cass taps him on the shoulder, knocking him out. Roger rushes in and orders Danny back onto the table, and then he throws acid in Danny's faces, and it staggers back before running out of the house.
Roger goes to Linda and revives her, then chastises her for sticking her nose where it doesn't belong, and says that she should be getting back to bed. But Linda says they've got to call the sheriff. Roger says they don't have to call the sheriff, nothing's wrong. Linda says if he won't call the sheriff, then she will. Roger can't have that, so he pulls Linda back into the lab, and he and Max leave, locking her inside.
Outside, Cass/Danny have found a well, and they stop to wash out all 4 of their eyes. Once their eyes are clear, they see a couple of parked cars at the bottom of a hill. Max and Roger are in the house, grabbing guns to go on the hunt for their errant experiment.
Danny and Cass make their way toward the parked cars, even going through swamp water to get to them.
There's a swamp in California?
It looked like a swamp.
It did look like a swamp.
The girl in the car thinks she hears something, but the guy tells her she's just imagining it. Danny and Cass reach the car, but the doors are locked.
In the other car, the girl of the pair of smoochers exits the car demanding to be taken home. She's not that kind of girl. She doesn't notice the title character at the other car, but Danny notices her.
Danny and Cass hadn't really noticed the other car, but it's caught their attention now. They head towards it, and the couple inside stare in disbelief. It's a convertible, so it's easy for someone with Danny's structure to break through the top. They grab the couple and pull them out,
choking both at the same time. Danny's hands are huge.
The couple in the first car look back to see what all the noise is, and they can't believe what they're saying either. Danny keeps shaking his head, and Cass is laughing maniacally as the deed is done.
And we see him lasciviously pawing at the prone body of the girl on the roof of the car.
The next morning, the sheriff and an ambulance are at the scene. A deputy reports that the kids are sticking to their story about a 2-headed giant. As a body on a gurney is placed into the back of the ambulance.
The sheriff is looking at a footprint on the scene. The deputy wonders whose footprint could be that big, but the sheriff knows only one cinder fella who can fit that shoe. It's Andy's boy, Danny. The deputy notes that Danny would never do something so heinous, but the sheriff wants to check him out anyway.
Meanwhile, Danny and Cass have taken refuge in the mine. Danny is having flashbacks to the tragedies he's witnessed and unwittingly participated in during the last few hours.
Meanwhile, Cass's head sleeps soundly. Now we're back at Roger's house, where Max says they have to find their creation ASAP, though it seems like they're just returning from searching for it.
Max says they have to find him before the sheriff does. Yeah, I know, says Roger.
But he wants to check on his wife first. Inside the lab, Linda wakes up from sleeping on Roger's desk as he enters. She's irked, to say the least. And then we see that the sheriff is approaching the house.
She asks Roger how he could have done such a thing, but before he can answer, Max calls out that someone is coming. Max puts his hand over Linda's mouth and pushes her back into the lab while Roger goes to answer the door. It's the sheriff. Roger tells him it's not a good time, but the sheriff says he'd like to talk to Danny. Danny, huh? You better come inside. Meanwhile, Max is trying to get Linda to inhale a rag stopped with chloroform, but she's stubbornly holding her breath.
The sheriff explains about the murders and the footprint and asks for Danny. Roger lies and says that Andrew took him to Middletown last Thursday because he got a better job offer.
When Roger can't answer who Andrew's new employer is, the sheriff asks if he can speak with Linda. Maybe she'll know.
He says, "You've caught us at a bad time. She left town too." And then there's a sound coming from the laboratory. In their struggle, Linda and Max knocked over some test tubes. Roger explains about his clumsy assistant, Max.
The sheriff says he'd like to talk to Max. Maybe he'd know where Andrew went. Roger can't let the sheriff go to the lab, so he calls out to Max.
Max finishes gagging Linda and comes out. Linda's trying to free herself inside the laboratory. Max tells the sheriff that he doesn't know anything, and they manage to get him out the door. In her struggle to free herself, Linda tips over a tray of instruments. Max and Roger come in. Max is enraged at the mess.
So Roger sedates Linda, for her own good.
She looks like she feels very betrayed right now.
I can't imagine why. After their rest, Danny and Cass emerge from the mine. Danny asks when his daddy will be getting better and coming back. Cass tells him that he's already told him he would, but in the meantime, he's supposed to take care of him. So shut up and go find something to eat. Cass is hungry.
And now we're back at Roger's house, where Ken is arriving.
He's here for his visit, just like he'd promised.
And he was invited. But when he knocks on the door and Roger answers, Roger looks surprised. He has no time for his would-be house guest and orders him back to the city and slams the door on him.
Ken is confused. This is how he planned to spend his vacation.
We see Linda again. She's unconscious, but lying in bed, still tied up. Roger watches as Ken peels out of the driveway, and then he declares that now they can go look again.
Elsewhere, Danny and Cass continue their hunt for food. They hear laughter not too far away, and they see a small gang of bikers camped out and making dinner.
One of the guys has a swastika on his vest. Boo. That guy is Turk, and we see his very grouchy old lady fixing up some food. The third guy in the trio wants him to come into town with him. Hearing this, the woman says, "The food's ready, and if he doesn't eat, she don't care." So Turk decides to stay, while the other guy rides off on his bike. Again, Cass/Danny approaches her, hungry for one thing or another. She sees them and shrieks. They clobber her and she's out. Turk, who had stepped away to the river, rushes back and pulls out a switchblade.
They grapple for a while, dirt is thrown, and Turk does stick the knife into Danny Cass's arm. Danny and Cass knock Turk down and bash his head in with a rock.
At this, the third guy returns, and when he sees what's happening, oh my gosh, the face he makes is so funny. He's absolutely unable to process this. But he springs into action anyway.
As Danny pulls the knife from his arm, the other cyclist pulls on a chain, and still riding his bike, charges Danny, swinging the chain over his head.
Like they're jousting.
He hits Danny as he drives by, and then goes for a second run. But by the third, Danny is ready and grabs the chain. The biker's pulled off his bike, and Danny whips him with his chains.
The woman, in the meantime, has come to and has started to run away. So Danny and Cass chase after her. She tries, but she can't outrun them. She makes it to a stream, and Danny and Cass catch her and drown her in it.
Ken, on his way back to the city, stops at a service station. The attendant asks if he's one of the reporters investigating the story about the murders and the teenagers who claim to see a giant with 2 heads.
This pings something in Ken's brain, so he immediately jumps back in this car to drive off. The surprised attendant gives him a total and rushes to pull the pup out of his tank. Ken asks for directions to the sheriff and then hauls ass out of there.
Ken immediately drives to the sheriff's office. He introduces himself and says he'd like to talk to the sheriff. The sheriff can't talk now, though. He says there were a couple of murders up in the hills.
More murders? asks Ken. Oh yeah, says the sheriff.
Hey, maybe you could be some help. Would you like to come along? Sure, says Ken. Great, you can follow me in your car, says the sheriff.
At the crime scene, Ken examines the woman's body and declares that nearly every bone in her body has been broken, although she's just lying there looking like she fell asleep.
Yeah, she's lying on a blanket.
Maybe it's a crime scene blanket?
I don't think they have those. I don't think they wanted to disturb, well, maybe they just don't want to disturb the dirt around it, but they wouldn't lift her and put her back down. That doesn't make sense.
Nothing makes sense in this movie. The sheriff says that the other two aren't in much better condition, and they wonder what could have done this.
The sheriff suspects it's the maniac who had escaped from the mental hospital some time ago.
They found his car at the bottom of a ravine, but not him. And then a dog trots through the crime scene.
The deputy runs over to inform the sheriff that a mob was starting to form with guns and dogs.
I love the way you do his voice. It's so perfect.
Meanwhile, Roger and Max are still hopelessly looking for Danny. Roger says that when they find him, they'll have to destroy him. Oh, Roger, says Max, do we have to? Can't we give him the chance to explain himself? I guess we owe him that much, says Roger. Then he muses that without morphine, the pain from the surgery will be unbearable.
And we see that in action in the next scene. Danny/Cass kick down a barn door, and then, holding his neck in pain, they run through the barn and then go lurching across the countryside.
Ken has returned to Roger and Linda's house. He goes inside and starts looking around.
Linda's awake, but still gagged and tied up. Ken is about to leave when Linda kicks a lamp off the bedroom table. Ken hears the racket and goes to where the noise came from.
Meanwhile, Roger and Max continue looking for Danny.
They find his footprints, and they lead to a hilltop from where they can have a view of the entire valley.
Back at the house, Linda has told Ken her whole sad story. Ken can't believe that Roger would do this to her. But Ken's there to help, and he tells her his car's out front, and he'll take her to see the sheriff after she gets dressed. From their vantage point, Roger and Max see that Ken's car is at the house. We've got to get back there, says Roger. Actually, he probably says, we've got to get back there.
Linda tells Ken that she hopes Roger won't be blamed for this. Really?
They're about to leave when Roger and Max return. You just couldn't stay away, could you? Says Roger. Ken says that the sheriff is going to find out about this anyway, so maybe Roger should just fess up now. Roger tells him that the sheriff isn't going to find out until Roger is ready for him to find out. Then maybe he and everyone else will appreciate just what it is he's accomplished.
Linda tries to talk, but Roger tells her to shut up and orders Max to lock her back in the lab. Roger holds his gun on Ken and demands that Ken go with him to see what they've done. Ken informs him, what you've done has already killed 5 people. At this, Roger finally shuts up and has the decency to look regretful.
The posse has lost the trail at the stream, so Sheriff directs the men to split up and half of them go upstream and the other half go downstream.
If they see him, don't approach him. Just fire 2 shots in the air. Then we see Danny and Cass shambling on as their pursuers continue the search.
They're making their way back to Roger and Linda's house. They enter the lab and start looking through the chemicals for something that will stop the pain.
Let me see that Linda has been locked in the monkey cage.
When she gasps, Danny and Cass turn their heads toward her. She faints as it opens the door and drags her out by her ankles.
And now I guess it's Manhunt Day 2? It's daytime again. Both the sheriff's men are out, as are Max, Ken, and Roger looking for Danny and Cass. Max, Ken, and Roger go back to the house to find Linda missing. Over with the sheriff's men, they found Danny's trail. It's leading towards the mine. And then we see that Danny/Cass are carrying Linda in that direction. This is all happening very fast, and we cut between the 3 different scenes.
Roger, Max, and Ken follow the trail, and Roger realizes that this trail leads to the old mine. The sheriff and his men have tracked their quarry to the house, and they enter the lab. It's a mess, and the sheriff is relieved that they haven't found any more bodies. Someone reports that they've searched the house and it's empty.
One of them declares that the dogs have the scent, so they're also heading to the mine.
Roger, Max, and Ken reach the mine.
Linda comes to see her conflicted captor. Danny apologizes for what Cass is making him do.
Roger, Max, and Ken enter the mine and find Danny. Roger aims his rifle, but Max points his at Roger, telling him to drop his weapon. He insists they take Danny alive, and Roger obliges. Roger hands Max a net to capture Danny, and Max throws the net over Danny's heads.
Roger tells Ken to take care of Linda. As Max and Danny are struggling, they knock some of the support beams off, and the mine starts to collapse.
Ken pushes Linda against the wall and stands in front of her to protect her.
Danny/Cass knock out Max, who gets hit by a falling boulder. Roger takes this opportunity to jump on Danny/Cass and inject him with something. Morphine, maybe? Sedative? And then they struggle. Ken and Linda are still in the mine, which is rapidly crumbling. Ken manages to grab one of the shotguns and plugs Danny/Cass in the gut, but it doesn't affect him. And Danny and Cass pick up Ken as Linda cowers behind a fallen beam.
Roger points his rifle and shoots, and Danny and Cass drop Ken. Ken grabs Linda and they go outside to safety as the cave-in continues. Roger fires again and hits one of the mine's sword beams.
And then the ceiling collapses, burying him, Max, and Cass/Danny.
Roger calls over to take Danny's hand as they both suffocate.
Then we see that Ken and Linda have made it outside, and they embrace. They're okay. And then we see the sheriff's men arriving. Linda tells Ken that she wants to protect Roger's name.
The sheriff asks where's Dr. Girard. Ken and Linda silently look toward the mine. "Oh, sorry," says the sheriff. The deputy asks Ken if there's anything to the story about a two-headed giant. "You know, sometimes too much imagination can be enough to destroy a man," says Ken.
And then the camera zooms in on a toy robot as Incredible plays again, and the credits roll. And that's the end.
You are listening to the American International Podcast, where we're discussing The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant from 1971.
The working title of The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant was The Incredible Transplant. Pre-production news articles, including one published in the Indianapolis Star in February of 1971, noted that the film was to be produced by Transgrafting Productions, Inc., but the on-screen credit indicated it was produced by Trident Enterprises.
The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant was shot in 6 days in Santa Clarita, California, and at IPC Studio One Hollywood.
Pat Priest, in an interview with Milton Berliner in the Washington Daily News, published in April of 1971, said that the two-headed effect involved John Bloom, who played Danny, carrying on his back the man who supplies the second head, played by Albert Cole. According to Priest, Cole kneeled on a sort of platform to keep his legs out of view and his arms pinned to his side. Considering he weighed 170 pounds, it was quite a job for the boy. Priest said her 2 sons saw the film and never once did they mention me, just the transplant monster. Priest also said in the interview that she cracked up every time she said the title of the movie.
During a 1978 interview on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Bruce Dern claimed he was not paid for his role in the film. He said he was issued a check for $1,700 during filming, and when he went to the bank to cash his check, it bounced. When he returned to the set on the next day scheduled for filming, the set had already been shut down.
John Bloom and Albert Cole also appeared in Dracula vs. Frankenstein, which also came out in 1971.
American International Pictures acquired The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant after production was complete and released it on April 14, 1971, with a premiere in Los Angeles.
The New Zealand Film Censorship Board refused to issue a certificate of approval for the trailer for The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant, saying the film was contrary to public decency and undesirable in the public interest. That was just the trailer.
Box Office Magazine recommended theater owners strap the head of a mannequin onto a tall, muscular type and have it advertise the film around town.
The AIP Pressbook suggested creating a standee from the poster image, a giant two-headed monster carrying a helpless woman, and putting it up in the theater lobby or in the windows. They also advised setting up a gag photo booth where patrons could get photos of themselves and a friend as a two-headed monster, and also working with a local haberdasher to create a promotional tie-in where customers, seeing a two-headed cutout figure on display, were implored to buy 2 hats for your favorite two-headed monster. They further recommended that exhibitors create a lobby display showing the history of transplants, specifically one that took place in the Soviet Union, where scientists grafted a second head onto the body of a dog.
Taglines for The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant include, 2 heads grafted on the body of a giant, the most fearsome living force ever created by man.
This brain wants to love. This brain wants to kill.
Science runs amok to create a giant with 2 heads.
A force more terrifying than any monster ever created.
Kevin Thomas of the LA Times wrote, "When a picture is called The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant, it would seem the title would tell all, but this is another of those happy instances in which a group of talented people make the most of an exploitation situation. The result is lots of fun because this AIP release has been so thoroughly worked out with good, legitimate performances. A.H. Filer of the New York Times wrote, Bruce Dern, as the dour scalp wielder responsible for the Incredible Two-Headed Transplant, really doesn't rate much sympathy. Movie plots notwithstanding, it soon becomes obvious that the best results he could expect would constitute an economy-sized menace to the community. Too much imagination can destroy a man, Dern's best friend warns, long before the monster destroys half a dozen citizens. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune wrote in his one-star review, I can't think of a movie which so piqued my interest as did The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant. No explanation is given for why the doctor wanted to make two-headed snakes and rabbits in the first place, but that's all right because the absence of logic is certainly where transplant is at, and some things are better left unsaid. He also said that if the film had focused more on the conflict of the two heads with some extended conversations and close-ups, it could have been one of the great bad movies. Instead, we get repetitive close-ups of the killer drooling while the giant whines, no, no. David Elliott of the Chicago Daily News Service called The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant purest awful and said even Dern, who has almost saved many a tacky film, seems stunned by the imbecilic nature of his assignment. He also complained that when he saw the film, the audience was made up mostly of children and teenagers, despite scenes that, even under the most pliably permissive interpretation, were not fit for children. Box Office Magazine, in its review, wrote, Anthony Lanza directed The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant in a manner that could be called serious camp. By its very nature, the plot is ludicrous, and yet there are effective moments. Bruce Dern, who deserves better roles, is called to make the scientist he plays sympathetic, in the way Dr. Frankenstein was even when he created a monster. He's believable, but with a wife as gorgeous as shapely blonde Pat Priest, a bit difficult to comprehend. The review also said the scenes with Albert Cole's head grafted onto Bloom's body are cleverly done. A review blurb in the Sacramento Bee said The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant was a vomitous movie of near rape, motorcycle hoods, mad scientists, and other repulsive things. Elston Brooks of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram wrote, The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant disproves forever the theory that two heads are better than one. Bruce Dern, an actor who deserves better, is the scientist obsessed with making a two-headed man. He couldn't have made better choice than John Bloom and Albert Cole, since neither is worth his salary as an actor. I kept wishing they had been named William, so I could call the picture a double bill. The whole thing is a badly made B-movie in which even the kids know that's a doll's head sewn on one guy's shoulders for long shots, and Albert just standing behind John in the close-ups. In the Baltimore Evening Sun, the reviewer wrote, Pat Priest said she made The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant because she needed the work. Poor girl. She'd have done better with a tin cup at Hollywood and Vine. The movie includes a theme song called It's Incredible, which wisely gets no closer to the theme than that. It features Bruce Dern as a mad scientist, in there planning second heads on monkeys, wolves, and snakes, and is pretty bad at it because they look like monkeys, wolves, and snakes with one good and one fake head. Dern ought to get back to bike films, and Miss Priest should find herself another series. Anything on television is better than this. In 1972, American International released The Thing with Two Heads, a blaxploitation movie which had the same theme, but featured Ray Milland, whose head is grafted onto Rosie Greer's body. The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant was featured on Riff Tracks with Mike Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy. Punk band Haunted Garage recorded a song with the title The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant on their 1989 EP Mother's Day. So the reviews that we looked at here were mostly condemning the film, but there was one surprisingly good one. From the LA Times? Yeah. So how'd the movie sit in your head? Well, I want to say I'm of two minds about this because it's kind of a funny joke. But really, I like this movie. I had fun watching it. It's dopey and dumb and the science is ludicrous. But I've seen it before and I do enjoy this movie, as idiotic as it is. Just for what it is. It's a B movie. It's bad science fiction. It's kind of gross and murderous, but not that long. It's only an hour and a half, and there's a lot of amusing moments in this. Did you hate it? Oh, not at all. I will agree. This is a terrible movie, but I love this movie. It's my all-time favorite Bruce Dern performance for sure. I don't know what his philosophy was on acting this role, because he's super laid back for 90% of his lines. It's an interesting approach because he has the opportunity to really chew the scenery here, and instead he goes the polar opposite. He downplays everything. I was surprised to learn that he was totally straight and never used drugs or drink because I assumed he was high through this whole movie the first time I'd ever seen it. Maybe not high, but sedated, some kind of way. He's really way too calm given what he's doing and what's going on. People are being murdered. He's having to assault his own wife and just basically look the other way when all these things are happening and lie about it. He's pretty dastardly. And yet he comes off as someone who's maybe just
taken money out of the church collection plate. That's the worst he's done.
If it's true that he wasn't properly paid for this movie, it may be because he showed up for work but didn't really do the work.
He performed. He just maybe didn't perform with the energy and intensity you might expect from a mad scientist.
He said the lines. I'm not sure he went beyond that.
Well, the interesting thing is that when he is angry at someone, whether it's Ken or Linda, anyone who's trying to basically pull him back from his mad scientist plan, then he's intense. Then
he raises his voice, but he's talking at like a normal level then instead of quietly half whispering all of his lines.
Maybe I'm comparing it to his other line readings where he's all sighs and non-committal line readings. And then when somebody challenges him, then he gets angry and raises his voice to, I guess, the level that we're talking at right now.
And speaking of voices, we have Kasem here, essentially playing two characters.
Newsreader and Ken. How could they not use the guy with the radio voice as their radio voice?
It was awful convenient that he was on set, I guess.
That's kind of funny, and it's so obvious. Oh, it's Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
And another interesting voice is the deputy.
I wrote down he'd sound like Deputy Dog in my notes. He just has a big, dumb voice, which you tried to imitate a couple times.
Successfully.
Very successfully. I guess the one thing I would say I didn't like is what Gene Siskel said, that there's no conflict between the two heads that was really engaging. We just had them kind of doing the same thing over and over again. Cass is licking his lips and imagining what he's going to plunder next. And Danny is looking confused and just kind of whimpering the whole time. I think that they could have made it a lot better if they had given us a little bit of interaction between the two that brought something to the story. And I'm thinking of the movie The Thing with Two Heads, where there is a lot more of that. And we'll get to that one eventually.
Yeah, I'm wondering if having Danny be brain damaged was really the right choice for this, because it kind of negated the ability to have those conversations.
I think they used that because they wanted to get over the ethical problems of taking this innocent person and attaching a second head to his body. They had to come up with some reason why that would be okay. It's not a good reason. It's not even close to being okay. But they needed something to justify what they did to themselves, Max and Roger. And that's what they came up with.
Yeah, even if Danny was a Paul Bunyan type and all there, and then something happened and he lost his mind, you're still in the same position. It's difficult to find a reason to have a healthy person and to do this to him.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know what Max was intending to do. He wanted a whole new body. And what were they going to find somebody who had recently died? Maybe get Ken to get them a fresh corpse from the hospital? Or were they really just going to kidnap some person and take his body, leave his head?
The first time that Max suggested that, he was ready to be part of the experiment.
Why didn't they put Max's head on Danny's body and just skip the whole two-head thing? That's what he wanted. He wanted a nice, strong body with his brain. So that seems like that should have been the experiment. But then we don't have an incredible two-headed transplant.
No, a transplant would be changing it out totally anyway.
Which is what Roger intended to do.
Because really only one head was transplanted here.
Right. It's the thing with two heads.
But that's another movie.
They haven't got there yet.
There's a couple other things that stand out in this movie as being a little strange. And that's that there's a member of the mob who's there wearing a suit and a tie.
Not the mafia mob, but the
search party, the posse. Yeah.
That was funny. I didn't notice that the first time, but then the second time, I think we'd paused the movie and I look over and this guy in the corner, it's like he just got out of the office and then decided to go hunt down a mad killer. Everyone else is in casual clothes, but he's in a suit. That was funny. What I thought was funny was that Linda, Pat Priest's character, all of these heinous things that her husband did to her, and yet 2 times she declared that she wanted him spared. The first time she didn't want him to be arrested. She didn't want the sheriff to know what he'd done. And then once he was dead, she didn't want his reputation tarnished by it getting out what he had done. But this guy was awful to her. Even before all this happened, he wasn't a great husband. He made promises he never intended to keep. But then he kidnapped her, confined her, drugged her, bound her, gagged her, and basically just forgot about her.
He locked her in a cage.
Yeah, and he caged her and just left her there. He might not have ever come back. Nobody thought about that. He was out hunting a mad killer. If everyone else wasn't looking for her, she might never have been found. And yet she wants to protect him still? That's nuts. I would never.
Yeah, even in terms of being a damsel in distress, it's a pretty thankless role.
Yeah, she just had to be pretty and helpless. And she was.
Yeah, she did that. There's not really much for her to do.
I think she's a lot more spunky on the Munsters as Marilyn. She had a lot more gumption there. Well, she wasn't the standout character of that ensemble, but...
No, she wasn't the pretty one either.
She was the homely one. Poor girl. But yeah, she had a difficult role to do with the straight face, I think.
When they did the cave-in at the end, it looked like maybe it wasn't dramatic enough because it seemed like they actually scratched the film to make it look, you could tell there's dirt falling.
Mm-hmm. Up the center of the film, there are gouge marks.
Yeah, it looks like they tried to enhance the effect, and I don't know that it really works. It just looks like the film's dirty.
Didn't they do that with another movie that we've seen, Terror from the Year 5000, where they actually gouged something out of the film to create an effect? Because obviously that was the 50s and this is the early 70s, and effects aren't that easy to come by. It costs money, which AIP doesn't like to provide. So they had to take this drastic step of damaging their film to make something appear that wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm thinking that they probably scratched the actual negative because I think the film quality just kind of goes down during that sequence as well.
It's very muddled. You can't tell what's happening. And maybe why we had such a hard time describing it. Also, there's a lot of quick cuts and everything's happening all at once. And speaking of cuts, I was extremely annoyed by the way that they would transition to scenes. I don't know how many times it happened, maybe 3-4 times, where we're transitioning, we get one cut of like the gavel banging or one cut of somebody chopping something. And then it goes back to the first scene, and then we get another one, it goes back, and another one, it goes back. It's so abrupt and loud and irritating to me. I don't think they needed to do that. It's just somebody showing off their editing skills.
It was a choice. I don't know if it was effective, and it wasn't consistent.
No, it wasn't. Only if something dramatic was happening. Like I said, banging, chopping.
Or Cass strangling the only worker at the mental institution.
Yeah, that one too. His victim's gurgling his last breath. But I don't think that was necessary, especially since it was just a flourish and not really necessary.
I want to mention that Albert Cole, who played Cass, we recently saw in The Hard Ride. He played Mooch.
Another bad guy.
From Grady's gang.
That episode came out last week. And the movie, The Incredible Two-Headed Transplant, though, came out the month prior to The Hard Ride. And it may have actually been just a couple of weeks prior. They were pretty much back-to-back releases. And so since we do this randomly, it's kind of amazing that we made them back-to-back episodes.
The actor who played Grady in The Hard Ride also appears in this one. He's a member of the posse, too.
He only has a minimal time on screen, though.
And Barry Kroeger, who played Max, we saw a long time ago when we did The Time Travelers. But I don't remember his character's. His name was Preston, and I scrubbed through the movie looking for him, and I didn't see him, so I don't know who he was in that. I didn't have a chance to re-look at that one, but I hope to soon.
Maybe he looked really different. He looks very old and haggard here.
It's only 7 years apart, so it shouldn't look that different.
No, but sometimes you have health problems or something, it can age you. I think they were trying to do something with that end shot of the toy robot, and you thought it was one of Danny's toys from when he was a kid.
I don't even know if he was a kid. I think he may have dropped it that first time we see him going to the mine.
Oh, maybe. I don't remember seeing that, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
They didn't call special attention to it.
They did not, no.
If that's the case. So I thought if we had never seen it before, what is the meaning behind this? Is it some sort of commentary on science run amok? Or is it, I don't know, they just happen to have something lying around? They're like, oh yeah, let's look at that. It seems kind of random.
Yeah, the way it shows up does seem kind of random. They didn't establish it being there or having a history. If they did, it was just a one-shot thing that was easy to miss because we both missed it after multiple viewings of this film.
One thing I didn't miss, though, is when they find the biker chick dead on the side of a stream and they're at the crime scene, this random dog just trots into frame and they don't pay any attention to it. This is a crime scene. They have evidence. They don't need dogs wandering through there.
It's a police dog.
It wasn't a police dog. The police dogs were on leashes. This dog was loose. It was like a schnauzer. It wasn't a bloodhound.
I still wonder about that blanket that she was lying on.
It was kind of like one of those tarps she used to cover up a vehicle, keep it from the weather.
Well, she had washed up on shore. Did she wash up onto a blanket? Because the blanket's perfectly light out.
The last time we saw her, he was drowning her under the water.
Well, we assume she washed up because she wasn't in the water. She
Maybe
was on
they
the shore.
rescued her.
They pulled her out and threw her on. I suppose that you don't have to keep a crime scene if the crime scene happened in the water. That makes sense. They wanted to keep the sand out of her nose.
Really, she looked like she was just trying to get a tan on the back of her arm. She didn't look broken. I know her character was hilarious. She was the most sour-faced person I have ever seen.
She was kind of crabby.
Very crabby. And we don't have a reason why. She's just looking at her old man and his friend. And,
well, I think that's the reason why.
Well, yeah, but we don't get the backstory. But they both seem like they're really goofy. I thought the friend, when he comes back and he does that what face, I thought he looked like John C. Reilly, just kind of pulling one of his dopey faces. You can make a case for that. It's hilarious. I managed to pause there, too, and it cracked me up just seeing that look on his face. Not that I don't get it. There's a two-headed guy attacking your friends. That's going to take you aback.
I don't know what kind of face I'd make.
Yes, he looked very baffled.
So Cheryl, how about we apply a letter grade to the Incredible Two-Headed Transplant using our AIP scale where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and B is pathetic?
Well, if I was grading this movie on basis of how well written the script is and how well directed it is and the acting, I probably wouldn't give it a great grade. But I like to grade things on how I feel while watching them. And I really enjoyed myself watching this movie. And that means it's an A for awesome. That's what you want out of a movie. You want to have fun watching it. You want it to be a great experience. And this movie is a great experience. Yeah, it's dumb as heck. And Bruce Dern gives one of the most low-energy mad scientist performances of all time. But that's part of the fun of it. Just watching him react to things, it's great. And I highly recommend, if you have not seen this, maybe make it a double feature. Is that a quadruple feature? And watch The Thing with Two Heads afterwards. Compare and contrast. I would, if I had time. So yeah, this is definitely an A for me. What do you think?
Oh, I agree 100%. I know that originally you wanted to do this episode as a double feature with The Thing with Two Heads. And I said, absolutely not. That's going to be way too much for us to handle in a week. It's hard enough just to do one head.
Well, now we have two. We can never do four. One day we'll do that movie, though.
And yes, this movie is a terrible movie. It's bad in all the best possible ways. Watching Bruce Dern go through the motions, looking like he wishes he were anywhere else, is just so much fun for me to watch. The clothes that Kasem wears as Ken. I described his yellow shirt with his ascot. He comes back later with a powder blue shirt with the biggest collar I've ever seen.
Yeah, and not big as in it extends down the front of his shirt, but big as it goes up to his ears.
And yeah, there were things that could have been done better. I think that they had established kind of a character for Danny beyond the giant with the mind of a child. And even given Cass more than one note, he's just a giggly rapist. I think they could have done some social commentary doing that. And obviously they do when they kind of tackle the subject again in The Thing with Two Heads. But as a dumb mad scientist movie with a dumb mad scientist who doesn't even seem like he wants to be there, I can't say enough great things about how much I love this movie. This one's an A for me too. It's awesome.
Watch it. You won't regret it. And you won't regret checking out our website. It's aippod.com. There you can find out more about the movies that we've covered. You can see posters, lobby cards, watch trailers, find out how you can watch them yourself if possible, and find the episodes that we've done so far. We've done quite a few. We've been at this for 2.5 years. There we have a comment box where you can get in touch with us if you have a question about a movie that we've covered, or a comment on something we've said, or request that we cover something in the future. And we have a page that asks you to help us find some movies that we can't find. And while you're there, check out our store. If you purchase something from it, it helps us keep the podcast coming every week. That's aippod.com.
I think that's it for this episode of the American International Podcast. Until next time, keep your head on straight, at least one of them. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.